The night was unforgiving. Rain poured from the heavens, drenching Santa Clarita cobblestone streets, turning them into rivers of reflection. Streetlights glimmered against the water like tiny beacons in a storm, illuminating the lone figure struggling down the sidewalk. Her name was Aaliyah Thompson, a young black woman, 8 months pregnant, carrying a bag of groceries clutched to her chest. Her coat, thin and worn, offered little protection against the relentless downpour. Each step was heavy, each breath measured, yet her resolve never wavered. Life had never been gentle, but she had learned to meet hardship with courage and grace. Suddenly, a wallet slipped from a nearby man's hand, tumbling into the rain-soaked gutter. He hadn't noticed. Cars splashed past, threatening to wash it away. Without hesitation, Aaliyah stepped forward. She crouched carefully, her hand reaching into the puddle. The cold water soaked her gloves, her fingers numb, but she didn't flinch. The stranger looked at her with surprise. He was tall, immaculately dressed, soaked in luxury, but utterly unprepared for the rain. Aaliyah handed him the wallet, her eyes meeting his briefly. "Here?"
"I got it," she said softly, voice gentle despite the storm. He hesitated, as if weighing her words, the faintest glimmer of admiration in his eyes.
Thank you," he managed, his tone laced with genuine awe, tinged with something undefinable. The rain intensified. Umbrella in his hand, he offered it to her, but she shook her head with a tired smile. "I'll be fine," she said, shifting her groceries and adjusting her coat. Something in the way she moved, her strength, her quiet dignity, struck him deeply. In that moment, a flicker of recognition, or perhaps regret, passed through his expression. But before he could say anything more, a taxi splashed by, and the sound of the city swallowed the moment. He turned, disappearing into the rain, leaving her standing alone on the glistening sidewalk.
Aaliyah watched him go, her heart pounding, the rain dripping from her hair and face.
She couldn't know that the man she had helped would carry that single act with him for the rest of the night, and that it would change both their lives forever. Back at her small apartment, the warmth of the heater barely chased away the chill. She hung her soaked coat, wiped the droplets from her cheeks, and unpacked her groceries. Simple things, bread, eggs, milk. Yet even these small victories felt heavy tonight. The city's storm mirrored the storm in her life. Bills unpaid, rent due, doctor visits looming, and a baby on the way. She sank onto the edge of her worn sofa, exhausted. The rain still pattered against the window, a constant reminder of the world outside. A world that could be harsh, unfeeling, and unpredictable. And yet, tonight, in the midst of the storm, she had extended a hand to someone in need. A small act, yet it had left an indelible mark, one she would not realize for another 24 hours. Somewhere across the city, the stranger returned home. Nathaniel Reed, a man accustomed to control, wealth, and the predictable rhythms of life, could not shake the memory of the pregnant woman in the rain. Her bravery, her empathy, her simple humanity. It haunted him. In the silence of his modern penthouse, surrounded by glass and steel, he thought of how rarely kindness touched his world. And now he had been shown its raw, unassuming beauty. For Aaliyah, the night ended as nights often did, in quiet reflection, in hope mingled with fatigue, in the knowledge that tomorrow would bring its own challenges. She had no inkling that the man she had helped would soon alter the course of her life in ways she could never imagine, that a single act of compassion in the rain would set in motion a chain of events leading to a life-changing miracle. The storm outside subsided slightly, leaving only the soft patter of rain against the window. And in that pause between thunder and silence, a quiet promise lingered, that good deeds, however small, are never truly forgotten. Aaliyah closed her eyes, exhausted but resolute. Tomorrow would come, and with it the first hint of an unimaginable twist, a gift from a stranger that would forever change her story. The rain had eased into a gentle drizzle, leaving the streets of Santa Clarita glistening under the muted glow of streetlights. Nathaniel Reed walked briskly toward the parking garage, but he couldn't shake the memory of her. Aaliyah Thompson, the pregnant woman who had helped him in the rain just moments before. He paused at a crosswalk, umbrella shielding him from the lingering drizzle, and glanced back. Across the street, under the soft yellow glow of a lamp, he saw her again. She was adjusting her groceries, balancing the weight with care, her expression weary yet resolute. The small act of kindness, performed with no expectation of reward, clung to him like a haunting melody. For Nathaniel, life had always been measured in contracts, deadlines, and investments. Generosity had its rules, a calculated return, a strategic advantage. Yet here was someone who had acted purely from the heart, without thought for consequence. He felt a pang of something unfamiliar. Admiration, perhaps even guilt, for the ease with which he had taken life's comforts for granted. She noticed him too, briefly meeting his gaze. In that instant, a spark passed between them, unspoken, fleeting, yet potent. Aaliyah tilted her head slightly, curiosity mingling with caution, her eyes questioning the stranger who lingered longer than a typical passerby. Then, as if remembering the storm's urgency, she turned and walked on, vanishing into the misty glow of the street. Nathaniel lingered, letting the image of her linger in his mind. She had done something so simple yet profoundly human. Her bravery and grace shone like a beacon in the dreary night, illuminating a world that often felt cold and transactional. He thought of the baby she carried, the groceries she balanced, the hardships he could only imagine, and a thought, daring, almost reckless, began to take root. What if he could repay her, even anonymously, for a kindness that had cost her so little, but meant so much to him? The rest of the night passed in a haze of reflection. Nathaniel reclined in his penthouse, a glass of untouched whiskey in hand, the city stretching below him like a mosaic of lights and rain-slicked streets. His mind replayed the image of Aaliyah, her gentle smile, the careful way she had handed him his wallet, the quiet dignity in her posture despite the storm. He realized he had been wrong to think of the world in terms of profit alone. Perhaps, he mused, there was more to life than wealth, more to power than control. Meanwhile, Aaliyah trudged home, unaware of the lingering gaze that had followed her. She struggled with the weight of the groceries and the chill in her bones, but she did not dwell on the stranger. In her mind, the world was already heavy enough. Rent due, bills piling up, doctor appointments looming, and the baby on the way. Small kindnesses were fleeting, and she had no reason to believe her act in the rain would ripple beyond that single night. Yet fate had other plans. Nathaniel could not shake the image of her. Every time he closed his eyes, she appeared, her resilience, her humanity, her courage, under conditions he could scarcely endure for even a moment. The seed of an idea took root, a desire to make a difference, to reward pure-hearted generosity, to honor the spirit of someone who had acted without expectation or selfishness, and so, while Aaliyah slept fitfully in her modest apartment, Nathaniel began plotting a path that would forever alter her life, a series of anonymous gifts, small at first, gradually culminating in something unimaginable, a house, a safe haven for her and her child. But he did not yet know if she would accept it, if she would understand, or if she would trust that such generosity could exist without hidden motives. As the night deepened, the city exhaled a quiet sigh. Somewhere between the glistening streets and the twinkling skyline, two lives had intersected in a fleeting moment of human kindness, one unaware of the other's significance. The other moved to an unusual, unprecedented course of action, and in the stillness of that night, a story was quietly beginning. A story of courage, suspense, and the possibility of life-changing miracles. Morning sunlight filtered weakly through the blinds of Aaliyah Thompson's modest apartment. The walls were a patchwork of peeling paint and old photographs, memories of simpler times and reminders of her family's love. She rubbed her eyes, feeling the persistent ache in her back from carrying the baby all night while juggling life's countless burdens. 8 months pregnant, she had learned to navigate discomfort with quiet courage, knowing that each day survived was a victory in itself. Her kitchen was small, with a single counter, a creaky cabinet, and a stovetop that had seen better days. Aaliyah prepared breakfast: 2 slices of bread, eggs cracked carefully into a small pan, and a cup of tea. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep her going. Every movement was deliberate, careful, as if she had to calculate the exact amount of energy she could expend without faltering. Bills were stacked neatly on the counter, though their order brought no sense of calm. Rent was due next week, and the hospital had sent another notice regarding prenatal appointments. The grocery list was already a tight calculation. Every item bought meant another sacrifice somewhere else, yet she didn't complain. This was her life, and she had no intention of surrendering to despair. Her phone buzzed softly. A notification, another reminder of the tightrope she walked. She scrolled through the message: an appointment confirmation, a small payment reminder, a text from her neighbor checking if she was okay.
Aaliyah smiled faintly. Community, she thought, is not always about grand gestures. Sometimes it's a shared glance, a quiet inquiry, a simple word of care. Her neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, an elderly woman who lived across the hall, knocked on her door, holding a small basket of fruit. "Morning, dear. Thought you might like some fresh apples," she said with a warm smile. "Thank you, Mrs. Jenkins," Aaliyah replied, her hands gently resting on her growing belly. "You're too kind," Mrs. Jenkins nodded. "Kindness is what keeps us afloat in this world. Don't forget that, baby." As the neighbor left, Aaliyah sank into a chair, the weight of exhaustion pressing on her shoulders. She traced her fingers over her belly, feeling the baby stir. "We're going to make it, little one," she whispered softly, "no matter what." Outside, the city moved with relentless energy. Cars honked, children laughed on sidewalks, and the distant hum of construction filled the air. Inside her apartment, however, time seemed slower, heavier, each breath a reminder of responsibility, each heartbeat a testament to endurance. Aaliyah thought back to the night before: the rain, the stranger, the wallet. The memory brought a fleeting smile, but she quickly dismissed it. Life had a way of teasing with fleeting hope, only to return to reality's harsh demands. She returned to her tasks: washing dishes, checking the fridge, counting coins for the week ahead. Her mind wandered to the baby's room, a tiny space currently holding a crib with mismatched sheets, a few donated toys, and hand-me-down clothes. She imagined decorating it one day, painting the walls soft colors, filling it with warmth, laughter, and light. But today, the room remained a quiet reminder of dreams deferred, a gentle whisper of hope she struggled to grasp. Aaliyah's life was not easy. Every step, every choice, every meal, each was a negotiation with circumstance. Yet there was a dignity in her perseverance, a quiet strength that radiated even in moments of exhaustion. She had learned to survive without complaint, to fight without expectation, to hope without guarantees. And it was this very resilience that would soon intersect with Nathaniel Reed's growing fascination, a collision of worlds that neither could yet fully comprehend. As she sat by the window, the morning sunlight casting soft shadows across her worn furniture, Aaliyah allowed herself a moment of reflection. She thought of the rain-soaked streets, of the man who had glanced at her with surprise and gratitude, and she wondered, briefly, almost playfully, if kindness might ripple further than one could ever predict. Little did she know, it already had. The morning sun had barely warmed the streets of Santa Clarita when Aaliyah Thompson settled into her tiny kitchen, the weight of responsibility pressing heavier than the humid air. Bills lay stacked like a daunting tower on the counter. Electricity, rent, prenatal appointments, and a credit card notice she had no hope of paying this month. Each envelope was a reminder of a world that demanded more than she could give, yet she met it with quiet resilience. She sifted through them one by one, carefully calculating what could be paid, what could be delayed. Her hand trembled slightly as she wrote checks, counting coins to cover small expenses. The baby's coming arrival loomed like a shadow over every decision, and the fear of the unknown tugged relentlessly at her heart. "I can do this," she whispered to herself, placing a hand gently on her growing belly. "We can do this, little one." The apartment was silent except for the ticking of an old wall clock and the occasional hum of a distant air conditioner. Even with the quiet, tension hung in the air. Each decision mattered, each dollar was precious, and each delay could carry consequences she could not afford. Her phone buzzed again, a reminder of her next prenatal appointment. The clinic was kind but overbooked, and transportation would cost money she hadn't budgeted. She pinched the bridge of her nose, trying to breathe through the rising panic. The thought of missing an appointment, of putting her baby at risk, made her stomach churn. Aaliyah walked slowly to the window, watching the city wake up below. The streets sparkled faintly after last night's rain, a quiet reminder that the world moved on regardless of personal struggles. She wished, not for wealth, but for stability, a life where she and her baby could exist without constant worry, without the gnawing fear of bills stacking higher than hope. She glanced around the apartment, noticing the worn crib in the corner, a few baby clothes neatly folded but sparse, and the modest furniture that bore the marks of years of careful maintenance. Life had never offered her much, but it had taught her to treasure what she had, to stretch it beyond expectation. Yet tonight, the thought of paying rent and medical bills simultaneously felt impossible. Her reflection in the window caught her off guard. Aaliyah looked pale, her shoulders slumped slightly under the invisible weight of worry, and yet her eyes held a glimmer of defiance, the unspoken determination that had carried her through countless storms. She had survived hardship before, she would survive again. But tonight, the struggle felt relentless, and exhaustion threatened to eclipse her courage. The doorbell rang unexpectedly, startling her. Aaliyah wiped her hands on a towel and approached the door cautiously. She wasn't expecting anyone. Her neighbors, though friendly, were busy with their own lives. Heart racing, she opened it to find nothing, only a small envelope resting on the doorstep, wet from the lingering drizzle. Curious and cautious, she brought it inside, dried it with a cloth, and opened it carefully. Inside was a single check for a modest amount, just enough to cover part of her bills. There was no name, no note, only the simple evidence that someone had noticed her struggle. A mix of shock, disbelief, and cautious hope surged through her. Aaliyah sank into a chair, staring at the check. Her heart pounded. Was this a gift or a mistake? Could someone truly be so generous, so attentive to a stranger's suffering? And then she allowed herself a small, trembling smile. Perhaps there was still kindness in the world. Perhaps there were people who acted without expectation, without calculation. Little did she know, the stranger who had inspired this act of quiet generosity. Nathaniel Reed was already planning the next step. He had observed her resilience, her courage, and her humanity, and he was determined to ensure that her life changed, step by step, surprise by surprise. Tonight, as Aaliyah prepared a simple dinner, the first ripple of hope reached her heart. She didn't know the giver's identity. She didn't know if the gifts would continue, but for the first time in weeks she felt the fragile warmth of relief. And somewhere in the city, Nathaniel smiled quietly to himself, knowing that he had set into motion a series of events that would forever alter the course of her life. The tension of unpaid bills, doctor visits, and uncertainty was still there, but now it was accompanied by the whisper of possibility. A hint that life could be kinder than it seemed, that small acts of generosity could blossom into miracles. High above the rain-slicked streets of Santa Clarita, in a penthouse that gleamed with glass, steel, and the quiet hum of wealth, Nathaniel Reed sat alone. Outside, the city pulsed with life, cars glinting like silver threads on the wet roads, streetlights flickering in the lingering drizzle. Inside, the room was warm, immaculate, and eerily silent, save for the soft tick of a grandfather clock that seemed almost to count the beats of Nathaniel's conscience. He swirled the amber liquid in his glass. Whiskey, neat, but the warmth it offered could not reach the chill settling deep in his chest. He had always been a man of control. Contracts signed, investments calculated, people measured by utility. Generosity had a price, and kindness was often a tool, not a gift. Yet last night's encounter haunted him. Aaliyah Thompson, the pregnant woman in the rain, her eyes weary yet resilient, her hands steady despite the weight she carried, her heart unburdened by selfish thought. Something about her had struck a chord he had long forgotten, something human and uncalculated, a light in the darkness of his carefully ordered world. Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, staring out the window. His mind replayed every detail. Her small smile, the careful way she returned his wallet, the gentle voice that had soothed the sting of embarrassment he had felt at dropping it. She had helped him, a stranger in a world that often ignored the suffering of others, and she had expected nothing in return. For hours he had pondered the significance of such an act. He had spent nights in boardrooms, negotiating millions, yet never had he felt the gravity of a single selfless deed so keenly. He realized, with a pang of humility, that life had offered him everything he could want. Yet here was a woman who possessed something far rarer, courage and compassion under pressure. Nathaniel's reflection shifted. He opened his laptop, reviewing news articles, social media posts, even neighborhood reports, anything that might reveal more about her life. He learned of her modest apartment, the upcoming baby, her financial strain, and the quiet dignity with which she endured hardship. The more he learned, the more determined he became. "I can't let her struggle alone," he whispered to himself. "Not after what she's shown me." The idea formed, a plan to help her, anonymously at first. Simple acts. Groceries delivered, bills quietly paid, small gestures to lift the weight from her shoulders. But the thought quickly escalated. If she responded with grace, with continued resilience, perhaps he could do something even more meaningful, a gift that would ensure her child entered the world with stability, hope, and a safe place to call home. He paused, considering the implications. Wealth could buy many things, but it could never force a heart to change, never ensure that kindness would be met with gratitude instead of suspicion. He had to be careful, deliberate, almost invisible in his approach, to honor her dignity and her choices. Nathaniel's eyes fell on a photograph of the city below. Aaliyah's streets, her modest apartment building, the park where she might walk in the mornings. He imagined her life, the quiet struggles, the constant negotiation with circumstance, and a resolve solidified in him, clear and unshakable. He would become the invisible hand that changed her fate. For Nathaniel, it was not just generosity, it was redemption. His life had been filled with calculated decisions, each for profit or advantage. Yet in this moment, he realized that true value lay not in wealth, but in the lives one could touch, in the courage one could nurture, in the kindness one could inspire. He spent the night sketching the first steps, an envelope at her door with a modest sum, a careful schedule of assistance, and eventually, if she proved herself worthy of trust and humility, something far greater, a home, secure and warm, where she and her baby could thrive without fear. As the city below stirred awake with early morning lights, Nathaniel closed his laptop and rose. The storm outside had long since passed, but within him, a new storm brewed, a mixture of anticipation, hope, and the quiet thrill of orchestrating a life-changing surprise for someone whose heart had already touched his own. In the hours that followed, Aaliyah would continue her daily struggle, unaware that her single act of kindness had already set in motion a series of events that would ripple through her life, small, anonymous miracles at first, culminating in a gift so profound it could alter the course of her destiny. And somewhere in the penthouse, Nathaniel allowed himself a rare, unguarded smile. For the first time in years, he felt not power or control, but something far rarer, the quiet joy of being a witness to true courage, and the hope of making a difference in a life that had touched him in ways he could not yet fully articulate. The morning sun had barely crested over the rooftops of Santa Clarita, casting a gentle golden hue over streets still glistening from the previous night's drizzle. Inside her modest apartment, Aaliyah Thompson stirred, unaware that her life was on the cusp of an extraordinary change. Her day began as usual, the familiar hum of the city through her window, the smell of instant coffee brewing, and the quiet rhythm of routine tasks that had become her survival. Yet today something felt different, subtle, almost imperceptible, like the faint vibration of possibility just beyond the edge of awareness. A soft knock at the door startled her. Frowning, Aaliyah waddled toward it carefully, hands brushing over her pregnant belly. She opened it to find a brown paper bag resting on the doorstep. No note, no name, just the gift itself. Curiosity mingled with caution as she carried it inside. Inside the bag were groceries, fresh fruits, eggs, bread, milk, more than she had managed to afford this week. Her breath caught in her throat. Someone had taken the time to deliver them, to ease the weight she carried, without asking for anything in return. She pressed a hand to her chest, overwhelmed with emotion, a mix of gratitude, disbelief, and hope. "Who could this be?" she whispered aloud, scanning the hallway. No one lingered, no eyes watched from behind curtains, only the quiet apartment and the soft hum of the city outside. Aaliyah set the groceries on the counter, unpacking them carefully, each item a small miracle in her life of constant struggle. The weight of her financial pressures, which had seemed so insurmountable the day before, suddenly felt lighter. And yet she couldn't shake the gnawing curiosity. Was this a neighbor? A stranger? Someone who had noticed her small acts of kindness? Meanwhile, Nathaniel Reed, high above in his penthouse, watched discreetly from his window. The first ripple of his plan had reached its intended destination. He observed as Aaliyah paused by her kitchen counter, her eyes wide, fingers trembling slightly as she held the groceries. Relief, gratitude, and a spark of hope danced across her expression. It was the reaction he had hoped for, not out of vanity but out of respect for her dignity, for the courage and humanity she displayed the night before. And yet the real test lay ahead. Would she accept the next gesture, one even more substantial? He had in mind something grander, something that would secure her safety and the future of her unborn child, a home, a sanctuary, a place where fear and struggle would no longer dictate the rhythm of her life. Back in the apartment, Aaliyah placed the groceries carefully into the refrigerator, the room now filled with a sense of warmth and possibility. She paused for a moment, hands on her belly, and whispered to her unborn child, "Someone out there sees us. Someone believes in us." Maybe life isn't always so hard. Her thoughts were interrupted by another small envelope slid under the door. Inside was a note. "You are stronger than you know. Keep going. Help is closer than you think." No signature, no clue, just words, like a lighthouse cutting through the fog. Aaliyah's eyes welled with tears, her heart swelling with a mixture of relief and wonder. This was more than groceries or notes. It was a message the universe had not forgotten her. Perhaps there were those who valued kindness, who believed in humanity's quiet miracles. She clutched the note to her chest, sitting down on the sofa, the baby kicking gently in response to her elevated emotions. Nathaniel, observing quietly from his perch above the city, smiled softly. He had set the first domino in motion, the initial wave of small gestures that would gradually transform her life, and he knew the timing had to be perfect. The next steps, the grand gesture, would require precision, care, and continued discretion, but for now, the seed of hope had been planted, and it had taken root beautifully. As the day progressed, Aaliyah went about her routine, carrying groceries, cooking, and tidying the small apartment. Each movement felt lighter, each step steadier, infused with the knowledge that someone, though unknown, had chosen to care. And in that quiet apartment, amidst the simple chores of daily life, the suspense and excitement of the unknown began to bloom. Who was helping her? And what might come next? The small acts of generosity were just the beginning. Tomorrow could bring another ripple, another surprise, one that would alter the course of her life forever. And somewhere in the city, Nathaniel prepared silently for the next stage of his plan, the gift that would elevate her from struggle to security, from fear to hope. In the heart of the storm's aftermath, a miracle was quietly unfolding. The small apartment building hummed with life as morning unfolded. In the tight-knit community, news traveled faster than the wind through the oak trees lining the street. Aaliyah Thompson moved quietly through her day, unpacking groceries, stacking bills that no longer weighed as heavily, and tending to her growing belly. But the neighbors had noticed. "Did you see the groceries she got yesterday?" whispered Tamara, a woman from the third floor, as she watched Aaliyah through the cracked blinds. Her husband leaned closer, curiosity piqued. And that envelope. No note, no name. Something's going on with her, he murmured. Gossip spread in hushed tones down the hallways and across the parking lot. Everyone wondered who could be helping her. Why now? Was it a neighbor, a friend, or some mysterious benefactor? Speculation swirled like autumn leaves caught in a storm. Aaliyah, oblivious to the murmurs, focused on her chores, arranging groceries, cleaning the small kitchen, and trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy. But she felt it, the subtle weight of curious eyes, the unspoken scrutiny that comes with unexpected fortune. Her heart beat a little faster each time a neighbor's glance lingered too long. Even Mrs. Jenkins, the elderly woman who had always been her anchor, noticed a subtle change. "Darling," she said one morning, "you seem different. Happier, maybe? But be careful. People talk." I don't know, Mrs. Jenkins," Aaliyah replied softly, hands on her belly. "Someone is helping, yes. But I don't know who. I can't think about what others might say. I need to focus on the baby, on today." Across the hall, the whispers continued. Speculation grew wilder. Some assumed Aaliyah had won a small lottery. Others suspected a secret admirer. Theories abounded, but no one knew the truth that her anonymous benefactor, Nathaniel Reed, watched from afar, orchestrating the small miracles with deliberate precision. Nathaniel observed quietly, a faint smile on his lips. The neighborhood's curiosity added a delicate tension to the unfolding story, an invisible pressure that would make the eventual revelation all the more dramatic. He had planned each act of generosity with care, ensuring Aaliyah's dignity remained intact, even as the community buzzed with speculation. For Aaliyah, the growing attention was uncomfortable, but unavoidable. She moved with measured grace, accepting gifts without fanfare, speaking politely to neighbors, never revealing her source. Yet the sense of suspense, of unknown forces shaping her day, kept her on edge. She couldn't see Nathaniel, couldn't know his motives, and perhaps that was for the best. The mystery kept her hope alive, mingled with cautious fear. Even simple errands became charged with tension. As she walked to the corner store, neighbors' glances followed her. Whispers floated just behind her, and every small interaction was colored with curiosity. Aaliyah held her head high, relying on her quiet strength, a shield forged through years of adversity. Nathaniel, perched high above in his penthouse, watched her every movement with the careful attention of someone preparing a grand design. Each act of generosity was a small stroke in a larger painting, one that would culminate in a gift no one could anticipate: a home for Aaliyah and her unborn child. A place of safety and hope, delivered with anonymity until the right moment. As the day wore on, Aaliyah began to sense the pattern. Each act of kindness, the groceries, the note was deliberate, intentional, and yet invisible. She wondered about the world's mysterious ways, about how someone could care so profoundly for a stranger. The suspense grew with every passing hour, a quiet tension that tingled in her chest and quickened her steps. Even as neighbors whispered and speculated, Aaliyah found solace in the knowledge that help had arrived in a world that often offered none. She felt the gentle pull of hope, an unspoken promise that life could shift, and that miracles sometimes came without warning. And somewhere above the city, Nathaniel smiled quietly, knowing that the suspense of mystery was a part of the gift itself, a delicate tension, a story unfolding, a life poised on the brink of transformation. In the heart of the bustling neighborhood, the stage was set. Suspicion and curiosity swirled around Aaliyah, but beneath it all, a quiet truth waited to be revealed: that even in a world full of whispers, one act of selfless kindness could ripple outward and change lives in ways unimaginable. High above the streets of Santa Clarita, the city's hum softened by distance and elevation. Nathaniel Reed leaned against the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse. The morning sunlight danced off polished surfaces, glinting faintly in the glass, but his attention was elsewhere, on a single, captivating thought: Aaliyah Thompson. Her courage, her resilience, her quiet dignity had left an indelible mark on him. Her anonymous acts of kindness toward strangers paled in comparison to the sheer force of character she displayed every day. And now, Nathaniel knew it was time for a gesture that transcended groceries and notes, a gift that would forever change the trajectory of her life. He turned toward the sleek leather chair where his laptop sat, opened it, and began the meticulous process of orchestrating a house purchase. Each detail mattered: location near her community, safety, affordability, and comfort. He scrutinized every listing, envisioning her life in each space, imagining the nursery, the kitchen, the living room where she would nurture her child. As he planned, Nathaniel felt a rare thrill, a mixture of anticipation and reverence. He had orchestrated million-dollar deals and manipulated markets, yet none had provided the same emotional resonance as this quiet, personal mission. Every calculation now had purpose beyond profit. Every decision had meaning. He drafted letters, lined up legal paperwork, and coordinated with a trusted real estate agent who would ensure anonymity. Timing was crucial. The gift had to arrive after small gestures had proven her humility and resilience, yet before she faced insurmountable obstacles. He envisioned her reaction: disbelief, tears, gratitude, and perhaps even suspicion. The suspense would heighten the emotional impact, a crescendo of revelation that would leave her breathless. Nathaniel paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard. He reflected on the delicate balance of influence and respect. This gift could change her life, yes, but it had to honor her dignity. She could never feel indebted or humiliated. It had to be seamless, almost magical, a true testament to human kindness, delivered without expectation, without fanfare, with the purity of a miracle. He pored over floor plans, imagined sunlight streaming through the living room windows, the baby's laughter echoing off the walls, Aaliyah arranging her small apartment into a warm, thriving home. Each mental image strengthened his resolve. This was more than charity. It was recognition of her bravery, her struggle, and her unwavering heart. Nathaniel leaned back, taking a deep breath. Outside, the city stretched endlessly, unaware of the careful orchestration taking place high above. He had set the first dominoes in motion with groceries and notes. Now the next step would come: subtle, powerful, life-altering. The house, delivered without expectation or intrusion, a sanctuary she would discover only when the time was right. Even as he worked, he considered the larger purpose. This was a test. Yes, of his ability to orchestrate something truly meaningful, but also a lesson in humanity, a reflection on how kindness can ripple through lives, transforming despair into hope. The careful planning, the suspense, the secrecy, all of it was designed not for him, but for her, for Aaliyah, and for the child who would grow up knowing that even in a world full of hardship, miracles could happen. As the day faded into evening, Nathaniel's plan crystallized. The house would be secured, paperwork signed discreetly, and delivery arranged in a way that maintained both surprise and dignity. The suspense, carefully nurtured, would make the eventual revelation even more poignant, the culmination of every small gesture, every anonymous note, every ripple of hope he had sent her way. Tonight, he would finalize the arrangements. Tomorrow, the first hints of something larger would begin to manifest. Aaliyah's life was on the verge of transformation, and Nathaniel, quietly, deliberately, would ensure that the next chapter began with a sense of awe, gratitude, and profound emotional resonance. High above the city, in the quiet luxury of a world many could only dream of, Nathaniel smiled. He was not just a man orchestrating a gift. He was a witness to courage, a participant in kindness, and an unseen hand guiding a life toward hope. And somewhere below, in a small apartment filled with soft light and quiet resilience, Aaliyah Thompson would soon discover that miracles, indeed, could come without warning. The afternoon sun filtered weakly through the clouds over Santa Clarita, casting a pale, uncertain light across Aaliyah Thompson's small apartment. Her stomach tightened suddenly, sending a sharp pang of worry through her body. 8 months pregnant, she knew that every twinge could carry a risk. Yet this pain felt sharper, insistent, almost urgent. Clutching her belly, Aaliyah wavered toward the counter for support. Her breath came in shallow gasps as anxiety coiled like a serpent around her heart. She had endured discomfort before, but something about this moment was different, more urgent, more alarming. Her phone buzzed, a reminder of her upcoming prenatal checkup, but the thought of leaving her apartment in her current state filled her with dread. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself, but the ache in her lower abdomen grew, and a cold sweat dotted her forehead. Panic prickled at the edges of her mind. What if this was serious? What if she couldn't make it to the hospital in time? Her thoughts spun the baby, her financial struggles, the uncertainty of life without stability. For a fleeting moment, fear threatened to overwhelm the quiet hope Nathaniel's gestures had inspired. As she staggered toward the door, a knock startled her. She opened it cautiously, expecting perhaps another grocery delivery, only to find a small package resting on the threshold, a neatly folded hospital kit, essential items for emergency care, along with a prepaid taxi voucher clearly labeled for urgent use. Her eyes widened in disbelief, heart pounding. Someone, unknown yet attentive, had anticipated her potential emergency. The combination of practicality and foresight left her momentarily speechless. She clutched the package to her chest, tears forming in the corners of her eyes. Aaliyah had never experienced this level of thoughtful care. Meanwhile, high above the city, Nathaniel Reed observed the streets through his penthouse window, a faint, contemplative smile playing on his lips. He had anticipated the challenges Aaliyah might face, planning not only for her daily struggles but also for emergencies, a silent guardian. Unseen yet deeply invested, Aaliyah quickly arranged the hospital kit, her trembling hands guided by a mixture of relief and mounting concern. She called the taxi using the voucher, her pulse quickening as she prepared for the unexpected journey to the clinic. Each step felt surreal, the unseen hand of kindness guiding her through peril. The suspense of not knowing who watched over her, and the emotional surge of gratitude and wonder. The ride to the hospital was tense. Rain had returned in light drizzles, slicking the roads, and every bump of the cab sent shivers through her already fragile frame. Yet in the midst of fear, a quiet reassurance persisted, a thread of hope interwoven with the unknown generosity that had changed her days in small, life-altering ways. At the hospital, she was immediately attended to. Doctors confirmed a minor complication, nothing critical, yet requiring observation and care. Relief washed over her, mingled with lingering anxiety for her unborn child. She realized how precarious life could be and how vital unseen support was in moments when courage alone might not suffice. Sitting on the hospital bed, Aaliyah reflected on the sequence of events that had led her here: the groceries, the notes, the anonymous guidance, and now the timely intervention during her health scare. The suspense of the unknown benefactor became a powerful narrative of hope, suspense, and resilience, a life-changing story she could hardly believe was unfolding. Outside, Nathaniel watched from his penthouse, orchestrating the next phase of assistance. He knew the stakes had risen. Her health scare amplified the urgency of the life-changing house gift he had planned. Each act of kindness now carried deeper emotional weight, emphasizing the stakes and the suspense of eventual revelation. For Aaliyah, the day ended with a quiet reflection on vulnerability and the fragility of life. She was exhausted, scared, yet profoundly grateful. Somewhere in the city, someone had acted with foresight, compassion, and generosity beyond measure, and she had no idea who. Suspense, gratitude, and hope entwined in her heart, creating an emotional landscape that would define the days to come. The morning sun painted the streets of Santa Clarita in golden hues, casting a warm glow over Aaliyah Thompson's modest neighborhood. Today felt different, charged with anticipation, though she had no idea why. Her apartment, once small and suffocating, seemed to buzz with a quiet tension, a sense of the extraordinary waiting just beyond the ordinary. A soft knock at her door startled her. She opened it, expecting perhaps groceries or another note, but instead found a small envelope with a key inside. The handwriting was elegant yet unmarked. There was no name, only the mysterious promise of a life-changing gift. Aaliyah's heart raced, fingers trembling as she held the envelope to her chest. Cautiously, she stepped outside, key in hand. Across the street, a sleek car idled quietly, driverless for all appearances, as if waiting for her alone. The envelope contained a single message: "Your new beginning awaits. Follow the path of hope." Confusion, fear, and excitement collided within her chest. Could this be real? Was someone playing a cruel trick? She followed the instructions, the city unfolding around her in familiar ways, yet each step felt surreal. The journey led her to a quiet street lined with trees, sunlight dancing on freshly paved sidewalks. And there it was, a house, modest yet beautiful, radiant in the morning light, its doors open as if waiting for her arrival. Aaliyah's breath caught in her throat. Her house was hers. Every detail had been thoughtfully planned: a nursery ready for her baby, a kitchen equipped with essentials, cozy furniture, and even small touches that spoke to her tastes and personality. She stepped forward hesitantly, key in hand, heart pounding with disbelief and joy. Tears streamed down her face as she entered. Each room revealed the care and attention invested in her future, every corner whispering a promise of stability, hope, and security. For the first time in years, Aaliyah felt truly safe, not just for herself, but for the life she carried within her. Meanwhile, high above in his penthouse, Nathaniel Reed observed discreetly. He had orchestrated this moment carefully, balancing suspense and surprise, ensuring that Aaliyah would experience the full emotional impact of the gesture. He allowed himself a quiet smile, knowing that her resilience, her courage, and her kindness had earned this miracle. Inside the house, Aaliyah explored slowly, touching the crib, running her fingers over freshly painted walls, inhaling the scent of new beginnings. She whispered to her unborn child, voice choked with emotion, "We're safe now. We have a home. Someone believes in us." Her heart swelled with gratitude for the unknown benefactor who had turned her life upside down in the most beautiful way. Neighbors soon gathered at a respectful distance, murmuring in astonishment. Rumors had preceded her arrival, but no one could have imagined the generosity behind it. Yet Aaliyah, overwhelmed by emotion, did not dwell on speculation. She simply stood in the doorway, embracing the tangible proof of hope and kindness. The suspense of the unknown benefactor lingered, but Aaliyah no longer felt fear. Instead, she felt awe, the profound realization that acts of selfless kindness, even from strangers, could transform lives in unimaginable ways. Every grocery delivery, every note, every quiet act of foresight had led to this moment: a house, a home, a future. High above, Nathaniel reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Each carefully orchestrated gesture had honored her dignity, respected her resilience, and ensured that hope could flourish. He knew that the greatest gift was not the house itself, but the affirmation of her courage and humanity. The suspense, the mystery, the quiet orchestration all had culminated in a single, life-altering revelation. Aaliyah's tears fell freely now, mixing relief, disbelief, and joy. She had survived hardship, faced fear, and embraced hope without expectation. And in return, the universe, through an unseen hand, had granted her a miracle. The house, more than just a structure of walls and windows, was a testament to her endurance, a cradle of love for the child she carried, and a symbol of the boundless possibilities of kindness and generosity. For Nathaniel, the day ended quietly with a rare satisfaction. The suspense of mystery had served its purpose. The gift had arrived, and the ripple of change had begun. And somewhere in the heart of the city, Aaliyah Thompson stood in her new home, cradling her belly, bathed in sunlight, surrounded by hope, ready to embrace the life she had so courageously fought to create. The sun had fully risen over Santa Clarita, bathing Aaliyah Thompson's new home in soft, golden light. The once faint outlines of struggle and worry that had shadowed her days were now replaced by a warm glow of hope, security, and possibility. She stood in the living room, gently cradling her belly, and allowed herself to reflect on the extraordinary journey that had brought her here. It had begun with a night in the rain, a simple act of kindness toward a stranger, a moment that seemed insignificant at the time, yet set into motion a chain of events far beyond her imagination. Each act of generosity she had received groceries, notes, thoughtful interventions, and now a house had been a lifeline, a whisper that someone unseen cared, that the world could be merciful even in its harshest moments. Aaliyah walked slowly through the rooms of her new home, letting her fingertips graze the freshly painted walls, the smooth surface of the crib, the soft fabric of the new furniture. The house was more than shelter. It was a sanctuary, a testament to the kindness and foresight of someone who had recognized her courage and resilience. She whispered softly to her unborn child, voice trembling with emotion, "We are safe now. No, we are loved. The world can be kind, even when we least expect it." The story of her life, marked by struggle, fear, and perseverance, had found its turning point. And yet it was not the house alone that transformed her. It was the unseen hand of generosity, the deliberate acts of care from a stranger who saw her worth, her strength, and her heart. In that recognition, she discovered not just relief, but inspiration. Her mind drifted to the moments that had defined her path. The rain-soaked night when she helped a stranger, the financial pressures that had seemed insurmountable, the health scare that had brought fear close to her heart, and the small miracles that had arrived in perfect timing. Each moment was a reminder of human resilience, of hope, and of the transformative power of kindness. Even the whispers of neighbors, the curiosity and speculation, had faded into insignificance compared to the tangible proof of hope now surrounding her. Aaliyah realized that life's true treasures were not measured in wealth alone, but in compassion, courage, and the quiet miracles that often go unseen until they touch our lives in profound ways. Somewhere, Nathaniel Reed watched from his penthouse, satisfied and content. His careful orchestration, born not of obligation but of respect for Aaliyah's dignity and recognition of her humanity, had culminated in this moment of awe and transformation. The suspense had served its purpose. The revelation was complete, and yet he knew the true reward was not the house itself, but witnessing the joy and hope that radiated from her and the life she now had the power to nurture. Aaliyah sat by the window, sunlight bathing her face, and let herself imagine the future laughter echoing through the halls, the gentle coo of her newborn, quiet evenings in a space filled with love rather than fear, and the knowledge that generosity had not only altered her circumstances, but had reignited her faith in humanity. She thought back to that first anonymous gift, and the realization struck her that even small acts of courage and kindness could set in motion a ripple effect far beyond what anyone could anticipate. Her simple decision to help a stranger had, in ways she could never have imagined, returned to her multiplied, reshaping her life and that of her child. With a deep, steadying breath, Aaliyah whispered a final prayer of gratitude, not just for the tangible gifts, but for the lessons they brought, that resilience is rewarded, that hope can manifest in mysterious ways, and that the smallest acts of generosity can illuminate even the darkest corners of life. Her heart full, tears of joy and relief streaming down her face, she stood tall in her new home. The story that had begun with uncertainty, struggle, and fear had found its resolution in kindness, foresight, and the profound beauty of human connection. And as the day unfolded around her, Aaliyah Thompson stepped confidently into her new life, ready to embrace the journey ahead with hope, courage, and unwavering faith in the goodness of the world.